Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is the Black Lives Matter book tag. I was tagged by Renee of the Librarian of Alexandria, who I have found to be one of the kindest people on BookTube, and I think that BookTube is already full of a lot of kind people, so that's saying something. She also churns out really great, well thought out content really often, so I highly recommend you check her out. This book tag was created by Ruth from Kindle Reads, who will be linked below. If you hear weird noises, it's probably my cats. Ruth talked about in her video how she wanted this to be sort of a jumping off point or a way for people who weren't sure how to talk about Black Lives Matter in the book community, and so once I get finished with this, I'm going to talk a little bit about current news and developments that have happened in the last couple of months. One way that I have found BookTube to be talking about Black Lives Matter is by talking about books that center on racial issues and centering those more. So with this video, I'm just going to kind of spread a little information that hasn't made its way into books yet because it's like current events. Not a lot, just some things that I've noticed that I haven't found to be dispersed in the general media as much as I think it should be. So the questions are: 1, not a moment, but a movement, because this isn't something that passes by and gets accomplished quickly, or that is important sometimes but not other times. It is an ongoing thing that will have to be ongoing until the world acts like Black Lives Matter. And the prompt is to name a book that wasn't just a story for you, but something that helped define you or helped you see life in a different light. So for that, I picked Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and the way that this meant something to me was in seeing the representation for someone with chronic illness, specifically chronic pain, because that is something that I deal with quite a bit, and seeing how the main character didn't let it define her, but also didn't live in denial of her illness and had to make adjustments to her life, and the people around her had to make accommodations as well, but nobody was a jerk about it, and showing that as something normal and necessary, and that it is a normal thing in a relationship to make accommodations for other people's specific needs, even if they're not specific needs that the rest of society understands or that many people have, and that having accommodations made for you doesn't make you less of a person or a burden. Number 2 is Say Her Name. The Black Lives Matter movement was started by 3 women. Name 3 female characters and or authors that just basically stood out for you and why. And so for those, I picked Kyoshi from The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Lee. I have loved Kyoshi since I first heard her referenced in the 4th episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and came to love her more as I learned more about her through that show. And then when I read this book, it was absolutely beautiful. I felt like it stayed so true to her character and also to the world, while also exploring new ideas and showing us so many more facets that we hadn't seen before. And Kyoshi herself is so strong and powerful, and she is also very emotional, and sometimes her emotions are too much, but they also usually give her strength. They aren't something that takes away from the powerful avatar that she is. She is also very passionate about justice, which is something that I appreciated from the show and that held true through the book. She refuses to stand by while people are being oppressed, hurt, or taken advantage of in any way, and she is fiercely loyal to her friends. Then I combined both Catherine and Jane from Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. I really loved both of their characters. They were, in a way, 2 sides of the same coin. They addressed a lot of the same issues in a slightly different way, but they both very much needed each other to get where they were going, and they were always much better off when working together. We get to more fully explore their differences and different ways of handling things in the second book, Deathless Divide, and I really enjoyed that, and seeing how they played off of each other and how vital they each were to the other. That kind of super strong platonic relationship between 2 women was very precious to me. And they both had the similarity to Kiyoshi of very much standing up for justice and taking care of people and refusing to let oppression and mistreatment go on without doing something about it. And for the last, I picked Anastasia from A Blade So Black and A Dream So Dark by L.L. McKinney. I'm currently reading A Dream So Dark. I'm about 75% through, and I am still loving Anastasia. She was introduced in the first book. She is a Russian lady, well, kind of. She's from Wonderland, but she now lives in Russia and trains Russian people to fight nightmares, which are nasty evil things that come from Wonderland to try to hurt people on Earth. And I really love the way that her femininity and her badassery don't contradict each other. Her nickname is the Duchess, and she got that from wearing lots of pretty swirly dresses when her 3 fellow knights of the same ilk all wore armor all the time, and she was perfectly good at fighting in it. And she also has the fiercely loyal to friends, take care of business type attitude as the others. The third question is, no justice, no peace. The core values of Black Lives Matter are dignity, respect, and justice. What book best represents your core values and why? And there are a lot of books that I have found pieces of my core values in. That is something that I really enjoy about reading a lot of books, is finding ideas that are really important to me in a wide variety of different stories and from a wide variety of perspectives. But if you want the most of those found in one single book, that would be The Lord of the Rings, partially because it has probably shaped my values in some ways because I started watching the movies when I was like 8, and also because the author and I have a similar religious background, being both Christians of a kind, although J.R.R. Tolkien was Catholic and I am Protestant. But also there are lots of little things that are unrelated to that, seemingly, that I find really special in those stories. One of the main themes of the whole book is that little people can make a huge difference just by standing up and doing what needs to be done. Even if they're not powerful warriors, they don't have any kind of position of influence, they can still change the world. And in the relationship between Sam and Frodo, neither one of them could have made it to Mount Doom on their own. And one of the things that Tolkien was saying with that is that friendship and taking care of each other is what ultimately saved the world, not any one hero. Then there's Sam's whole speech on the nature of stories and how the badness that happens in a story and that you go through makes the ending where everything is better much more worthwhile, and how that affects how you handle struggles in your own life when you read or experience those stories. I love that speech. You could tattoo that speech on my forehead. And it is definitely the series with the most quotes that I have memorized and that are just totally applicable to a lot of different situations. Specifically, Smeagol quotes like, "You ruins it," and pocketses, plus the whole discussion of potatoes are sayings that get passed around in my family all the time when we're just talking about normal stuff. So that one's pretty huge for me as far as core values go. Number 4 is deviations. The Black Lives Matter hashtag has been taken over by every cause and movement, from immigration to it being used as a generalization. What is the worst copycat book you have ever read? And for this one, I couldn't come up with one, even though I was going through all my Goodreads stuff. I just haven't read, maybe I haven't read that many books that I come across copycats. Also, I don't tend to read very specific subgenres very often. Like if I read a lot of vampire books or a lot of dystopian book directly after they got big, after certain movies came out, I would probably notice that. But I have only recently gotten into reading very niche subgenres, so I haven't come across that too much. But on to the next one. Number 5 is The Walk Worth Taking. what is a book that you struggled through but by the end of it found worthwhile? And for that one I picked The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, because about 50 pages in I really wasn't liking the main character. I wasn't feeling compelled by the plot. I didn't even think there was much of a plot at that point, and I just didn't really care, but I kept on reading and it turned out to be one of my favorite reads ever, and it was so precious and meaningful. There were really wonderful themes of adoption and found family and the difference that books make on people's lives and the difference talking to other people about books makes, and that was really precious to me, so I'm really glad that I kept going with that one. So I highly recommend that you check out the original video. Ruth has great things to say. She also links some more resources, but the information that I wanted to mention was, one, that a lot of people on the news, and especially then right-wing people taking it farther, have been trying to make out that Black Lives Matter protests have been very violent and are always rioting and looting, and that defeats their point, and then that means that they should be disbanded, and it justifies the police brutality that has been used against protesters. But I was looking up statistics, and there is a report made by what I find to be a reputable group that the whole thing they do is, thank you Samwise, is study these types of movements, and numbers were collected and it shows that about 93% of Black Lives Matter protests have been completely peaceful. And in the article I found by CNN, it also talked about the rates of police violence against protesters was higher against Black Lives Matter protests than it is at other protests, like ones that protest regulations having to do with COVID-19, even though the Black Lives Matter protests had a lower percentage of violence and looting. Also, it has largely been found that when violence and looting were involved in these protests, they were either from anti-protesters who were fighting with the protesters, or from white people who had infiltrated the protests and attacked places trying to get people to blame the Black Lives Matter movement. Also, some people mistakenly think that police brutality against Black people is a one-time issue or a couple times issue, but even after the protests have gone on, police violence against Black people has continued. There have been more incidents, and even the ones that were very close to the center of the resurgence of support back in June, July, such as Breonna Taylor, have not been resolved. There are also cases of multiple Black people with autism who have been hurt and are under threat of being deported or being locked up for the rest of their lives because they couldn't respond to police harassing them in a neurotypical way, and it is an ongoing thing. And even with all of these protests and all this attention, the goals are still not being accomplished, and so we can't stop fighting for equality when it hasn't happened. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be linking lots more resources below, as well as articles about the things I just talked about, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!